There's a lot of interesting ideas about if he was killed, who killed him.
Yeah.
Because it could be Putin. It could be somebody in Russia who's not Putin.
Yeah.
It could be Ukrainians because it would benefit the war.
They killed Dugin's daughter in Moscow. So, yeah, it's possible.
And it could be, the United States could also be involved.
I don't think we kill people in other countries to affect election outcomes. Oh, wait. No, we do it a lot and have for 80 years, and it's shameful. I can say that as an American because it's my money in my name. Yeah, I'm really offended by that. And I never thought that was true. And I spent, again, I'm much older than you. And so I spent my worldview was defined by the Cold War. And very much in the house I lived in Georgetown, in Washington, D.C., that's what we talked about. And the left at the time, I don't know, the wacko MIT professor who I never had any respect for, who I know you've interviewed, et cetera. Like the hard left was always saying, well, the United States government is interfering in other elections. And I just dismissed that completely out of hand as stupid and actually a slander against my country. But it turned out to all be true or substantially true anyway. And that's been a real shock for me in middle age to understand that. But anyway, as to Navalny, look, I don't know. But we should always proceed on the basis of what we do know, which is to say on the basis of truth, knowable truth. And if you have an entire policymaking apparatus that is making the biggest decisions on the face of the planet on the basis of things that are bullshit or lies, you're going to get bad outcomes every time. And that's why we are where we are.
Does it bother you that basically the most famous opposition figure in Russia is sitting in prison?
Well, of course it does. Of course it bothers me. It bothered me when I got there. It bothers me now. I was sad when he died. Yeah, that's one of the measures it's one of the basic measures of political freedom. Are you imprisoning people who oppose you? Are you imprisoning people who pose a physical risk to you? There's some subjective decision-making involved in these things. However, big picture, yeah. Do you have opposition leaders in jail? It's not a politically free society, and Russia isn't, obviously. And as I said, a friend of mine from childhood, an American, actually, was a wonderful person, lives in Russia Moscow with his Russian wife. And I had dinner with him. He's a very balanced guy, totally non-political person, and speaks Russian and loves his many Russian children and loves the culture. And there's a lot to love. The culture that produced Tolstoy. It's not a gas station with nuclear weapons. Sorry, only a moron would say that. It's a very deep culture. I don't fully understand it, of course, but I admire it. Who wouldn't? But I asked him, what's it like living here? And he goes, it's great. Moscow is a great city, indisputably. He said, you don't want to get involved in Russian politics. And I said, what? He said, well, you could get hurt. You could wind up like Navalny if you did. But also it's just too complicated. The Russian mind is not exactly the same. It's a European city, but it's not quite European. And the way they think is very, very complex, very complex. It's too complicated. Just don't get involved. And I would just say two things. One, I'm not sure. I don't know. But my strong sense is that Navalny's death, whoever did it, probably didn't have a lot to do with the coming election in Russia. My sense from talking to Putin and the people around him is they're not really focused on that. In fact, I asked one of his top advisors, when's the election? And she looked at me completely confused. She didn't know the date of the election. Okay. She's like, March? Okay. And I asked a bunch of other people just in Moscow, who's Putin running against? Like nobody knew. So it's not a real election, right? In the sense that we would recognize at all. Second, I was really struck by so many things in Moscow and deeply bothered by a lot of things that I saw there. But one thing I noticed was the total absence of cult of personality propaganda, which I expected to see and have seen around the world. Jordan, for example. I don't know if you've been to Jordan, but go to Jordan. In every building, there are pictures of the king and his extended family. And that's a sign of political insecurity. You don't create a cult of personality unless you're personally insecure and also unless you're worried about losing your grip on power. None of that. It's interesting. And I expected to see a lot of it, like statues of Putin. No, there are no statues of anybody other than like Christian saints. So that was like, I'm not quite sure. I'm just reporting what I saw. So yes, it's not in a political sense, it's not a free country. It's not a democracy in the way that we would understand it or want. I don't want to live there, okay? Because I like to say what I think. In fact, I make my living doing it. But it's not Stalinist in a recognizable way. And anyone who says it is should go there and tell me how.